Hi. Okay. Here we are again, and here we go again. This is my next audio video on my Questioning Quran series. In this audio video, we are going to explore the second chapter of the Quran, which is an Al-Baqarah, and which is translated in English as the cow or the heifer. Previously, I explored how the name of the second chapter of the Quran came about, and how it originates from the Bible in Deuteronomy 21. Now I am going to start exploring chapter 2 itself, which is the longest chapter of the Quran. In general, chapter 2 of the Quran narrates the accounts of Musa, who is Moses for Jews and Christians, and Musa for Muslims. Ibrahim, who is Abraham for Jews and Christians, and Ibrahim for Muslims. Suleiman, who is Solomon for Jews and Christians, and Suleiman for Muslims. And Dawood, who is David for Jews and Christians, and Dawood for Muslims. I'm going to look at verses 1 to 20 in this audio video. Okay, let's read out the verses 1 to 20 of chapter 2 of the Quran. In the name of God, most gracious, most merciful. Chapter 2, verse 1, A-L-M. Or in Arabic, it would be Alif, Lam, Mim. Chapter 2, verse 2. This scripture is infallible, a beacon for the righteous. Is this scripture infallible? That is the first question. Is it really infallible? Chapter 2, verse 3. Who believe in the unseen, observe the contact prayers or salat, and from our provisions to them, they give to charity. Who believe in the unseen. What is the unseen? What do we understand about the unseen, if anything? Who or what is the unseen that is being referred to here in the Quran? And why is it the unseen? Why is it that we cannot see it? Chapter 2, verse 4. And they believe in what was revealed to you, and in what was revealed before you, and with regard to the hereafter, they are absolutely certain. What was revealed to you? What was revealed to Muslims? The Quran. And what was revealed before you, meaning what was revealed to Christians and Jews before the Muslims. Is that what the Quran is referring to here? Chapter 2, verse 5. These are guided by their Lord. These are the winners. So, who is it that the Quran is referring to as winners? The ones who believe what is revealed to them and what is revealed before them. So, who is the Quran referring to here? Is the Quran referring to the believers? Chapter 2, verse 6. As for those who disbelieve, it is the same for them, whether you warn them or not warn them, they cannot believe. Now, what is the Quran referring to here? Is the Quran referring to the disbelievers here? Whether you warn them or not warn them, they cannot believe. Now, could this statement also apply to the so-called believers as well as non-believers? That's my question. Chapter 2, verse 7. God seals their minds and their hearing, and their eyes are veiled. They have incurred severe retribution. Again, is the Quran referring to the disbelievers here and only the disbelievers? Or could this statement also can be applied to the believers or the so-called believers as well? Chapter 2, verse 8. Then there are those who say, we believe in God and the last day, while they are not believers. Now, what is the Quran referring to here with this statement? Is the Quran referring to the disbelievers? Is the Quran referring to the hypocrites, or what would be called munafiqeen in Arabic? Yeah, I'll repeat verse 8. Then there are those who say, we believe in God and the last day, while they are not believers. Is the Quran referring to the hypocrites or the munafiqeen here? Verse 9. In trying to deceive God and those who believe, they only deceive themselves without perceiving. Now, this verse 9 that says, in trying to deceive God and those who believe, they only deceive themselves without perceiving. Can this statement be also applied to the believers as well, and not just the disbelievers or the hypocrites? Could this statement also be applied to the believers as well? Verse 10. In their minds there is a disease. Yeah, I call that disease our reptilian brain. Consequently, God augments their disease. They have incurred a painful retribution for their lying. Now, Is the Quran referring to liars or people who lie here? And what is this retribution that the Quran is mentioning or keeps mentioning? Is there really a painful retribution awaiting such people or souls? And what kind of retribution is that going to be? What is it really? Is it really the hellfire and a fiery pit? And is it really going to come in the exact same way that we have been told in the Quran and in other holy books like the Bible? So what is this painful retribution or retribution? What is it really about? Is it really about what we have been told through our holy books like the Quran here? Verse 11. When they are told, "Do not commit evil," they say, "Oh, but we are righteous." Verse 12. In fact, they are evildoers, but they do not perceive. Now, who does this apply to? Does this statement or these statements in verses 11 and 12, do these statements only apply to, let's say, people who are liars, people who are deceivers, people who are hypocrites? Or could these statements also apply to the so-called believers? Verse 13. When they are told, "Believe like the people who believed," they say, "Shall we believe like the fools who believed?" In fact, it is they who are fools, but they do not know. Now, what is the Quran referring to here? Is the Quran referring to the Christians and the Jews, the people who came before the Muslims? There is obviously a historical context to this chapter of the Quran. There's obviously history behind some of these statements, which is the history of who or what came before the Quran, or who or what existed before the Quran, the religion of Islam, and Muslims. Verse 14. When they meet the believers, they say, "We believe," but when alone with their devils, they say, "We are with you. We were only mocking." Again, who is the Quran referring to here? Hypocrites, munafiqeen, liars, deceivers? Yeah, basically hypocrites or the munafiqeen. Verse 15. God mocks them and leads them on in their transgressions, blundering. God mocks them? Why would be God so bothered as to mock God's creation? That does not make sense to me. Why would God mock God's own creation? And leads them on in their transgressions, blundering. Now, why would that be? Why would God do that? Is there something here that the Quran is not telling the Muslims about? Is there something here that the Muslims are not being told about? Is the Quran missing something here? Is the Quran not telling the Muslims here about something? Yeah, maybe the universal law of free will, or for the religious people, you can turn that into God's law of free will. So, is that what we're talking about here? Is that what the Quran could be referring to? Indirectly, because it's not telling Muslims the truth. It's not telling Muslims why God would lead them on in their transgressions, blundering. It's the way the Quran is putting it, or it's the way the Quran is I don't even know. It's the way this is being put to the Muslims that just sounds wrong as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, moving on. Verse 16. It is they who bought the straying at the expense of guidance. Such trade never prospers, nor do they receive any guidance. Again, is the Quran only referring to the disbelievers and the hypocrites here, or could this statement also be applied to the believers and the Muslims themselves? Verse 17. Their example is like those who start a fire, then as it begins to shed light around them, God takes away their light, leaving them in darkness, unable to see. Now again, why would a supposedly merciful God do that? Again, why would God do that? Why would God take away their light, or our light, and leave us in darkness, unable to see? And is this about what the real God would do, or is this about what the fake or false God would do? Is this something that a false God would do to its creation? Verse 18. Deaf, dumb, and blind, they fail to return. Again, maybe the Quran is only referring to the disbelievers and the hypocrites here, but really, I would question again, would this statement also be applicable to the so-called believers? Are the so-called believers not deaf, dumb, and blind these days as well? They are. They are. Verse 19. Another example, a rainstorm from the sky in which there is darkness, thunder, and lightning. They put their fingers in their ears to evade death. God is fully aware of the disbelievers. Again, this statement can be applied to everyone, even the believers. Even the believers get scared of all the darkness and thunder and lightning and put their fingers in their ears because they're afraid of death or they're afraid to die. This statement does not just or only applies to the disbelievers. This statement also applies to the believers. This statement applies to everyone. Verse 20. The lightning almost snatches away their eyesight. When it lights for them, they move forward, and when it turns dark, they stand still. If God wills, He can take away their hearing and their eyesight. God is omnipotent. Again, what kind of a God is this? I mean, even if I just take this literally, what kind of a God is this? Who takes away, people's hearing and people's eyesight and leaves them suffering in pain and in darkness. And leaves them in the darkness to suffer. What kind of a God is this? And what kind of a merciful God is this? Or is the Quran trying to tell us something again here, indirectly? Meaning, maybe about the false God, or maybe that's what a false or a fake God would do to its creation, because it's a false God and it does not care about what happens to souls or people or to the creation of the real God. So again, is the Quran trying to tell us something indirectly here about the false God? Or about a wannabe God? Or about someone or something that is pretending to be God but is not the real God? So, in summary, what is the Quran talking about and referring to in verses 1 to 20 of chapter 2? About believers, disbelievers, and hypocrites, or the munafiqeen. So here are a few other questions that people or Muslims can ask themselves when it comes to the Quran. You could ask yourself, what are my belief or my beliefs? What is my personal belief? Who or what am I being influenced by to have that belief? Is it my own? Because I have sat down and I have reflected upon the Quran and I have tried to gain understanding of it from a deeper level or at a deeper level? Or is it all hearsay? Or has it all come from people or sources outside of myself? So, who or what am I being influenced by to have the belief that I have, or have the beliefs that I have? What is my perception? What is my own perception about all this? And when it comes to the Quran and whatever is said therein, in the Quran, does the real God really care if you believe in God or not? I mean, why would the real God be so bothered about anyone believing in him or her or it, or anyone believing in God or not? Why would the real God be so bothered about it? Or would he be really bothered about it? I mean, if God just is, and if God really exists, does God really need any approval of God's existence by asking or even forcing people or its creation to believe in him or her or it or God? I mean, if God really exists and God is all powerful, all knowing, omnipotent, why would anyone like that even be bothered about its creation's approval of its existence? Why would the real God be bothered about any of it or any of that? Am I making any sense? I don't know. Anyway, and you can also ask yourself, before I point a finger at another, or before I want to go ahead and think or say that I am a believer, but someone else is a disbeliever or a non-believer, before I point a finger at another and before I judge another, do I need to pause and ask if I myself am a true believer or not? And if I myself am a hypocrite? And do I need to start working on myself first before I dare judge another on those grounds, at least, or over anything? And one could also ask oneself, is my belief, my perception, my understanding about it all even correct? Or do I need to look at the Quran and its teachings with fresh eyes now? And do I need to cultivate a new understanding of all of this? And cultivate a new and different perspective and a new understanding of the Quran? Or am I going to stay stuck in the old interpretations, which are mainly misinterpretations of the Quran, and I'm just going to stay stuck in the old? The time has come that Muslims must start looking at the Quran and its teachings in a different light, in a new light, in a new way. The time has come to do that. The time is now. And that was my way of looking at the Quran and its teachings now in the 21st century, and looking at verses 1 to 20 of the second chapter of the Quran. Until next time.